of that parent-teacher organization they did the planning assembly, they had appreciation week, Moss had Spring X. In addition to they also made a generous contribution to the end-of-year party for the fourth graders at Campbell Elementary School. So kudos to that Moss and Campbell Elementary PTO team, because they're doing amazing things and working really hard to ensure a nice environment for our kids. So thank you again. And similar sentiments to the Metuchen High School PTO. I know they had a really busy season as well with the music events. In addition to that, they just finished up prom season, so we saw lots of really wonderful pictures across the town over the weekend. So again, hope everybody had a safe and fun prom season. But yeah, that was really it. Just wanted to summarize everything that people have been doing, because again, they're all volunteers, so this is tremendous work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I believe there's still a couple more events with the Campbell Chorus this Thursday, third and fourth graders. Yeah, so a couple more things still going in this May-Cember period that we are all existing in now. So lots of exciting times. Wonderful. All right, so at this time, I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Mr. Dörflinger, all in favor? All right, good night, everyone.
We've got a quorum. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act pursuant to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. Said notice was published in the Home News Tribune on January 2nd of this year, posted in Borough Hall, and sent to the Star Ledger for information. All requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act were satisfied. We all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Robert, would you be so kind as to lead us off?
Sure will.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You. Okay, Joanna, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Clarkson? Here. Ms. Cohen?
Here.
Mr. Delia?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Ms. Gelber? Mr. Grossman?
Here.
Ms. Koskowski?
Here.
Mr. Lifton?
Here.
Mr. Love? Mayor Bush? Mr. Coughlin?
Here.
Ms. Thackariah? And Mr. Westrick? Thank you.
Okay, declare a quorum present. Thank you for coming out on this balmy spring evening. And our new business, which is the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan. Robert, would you be so kind as to lead us into what we're going to be discussing?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the public hearing on the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan for the Borough of Metuchen for the fourth round. It is an amendment to the master plan, so it is subject to a public hearing. We'll talk a little bit later about what that amounts to, but by way of background, I assume by now that everybody knows that the Supreme Court declared as early as 1970-something that all municipalities, actually it started off with all developing municipalities in the state of New Jersey are required to somehow provide for affordable housing in order to keep the power to zone intact. So that actually has morphed into sort of all municipalities, but in any event, all municipalities, including the Borough of Metuchen, are required to provide a housing element and fair share plan in order to be able to continue to have a zoning ordinance. This fair share plan is going to be presented by the borough's affordable housing planner, and I believe that our planning board planner will be joining in as well. So some of you will remember that 10 years ago or so, we did the third round plan. And we said at that time that that plan would be good for 10 years, and in fact it was, and we probably all thought that the 10 years would never come, but here it is, and we're now in the fourth round. So there are a few changes. In the first two rounds, the affordable housing process was overseen by what was called COA, the Council on Affordable Housing. In 2015, however, the Supreme Court decided that COA had not been functioning, and in fact, it had not been, and the Supreme Court determined that the courts would take over what was previously an administrative process. So in the last round, that is the third round, all of the proceedings took place in the courts. For the fourth round, the legislature adopted and the governor signed a law, an amendment to the Fair Housing Act. This took place in March of 2014, which changed the process. And it supposedly made it an administrative process, but it still is run through the courts. But the Department of Community Affairs sort of heads up what the process is. So the process is that the Department of Community Affairs would determine what each municipality's affordable housing obligation would be, and municipalities had an opportunity to either accept that number or to challenge it, and whether or not the number was interested parties, which include the Fair Fair Share Housing Center and the Builders League and other interested parties had the option to challenge it. We have, and I'll tell you a little bit about it later, but we have a sort of a committee or a working group that has been working on this affordable housing plan, and the group determined and recommended to the Borough Council that it accept the DCA numbers, which we did. So for the fourth round, it was determined that the borough has what is called a present need obligation of 5 units and a prospective need obligation of 120 units. Present need is essentially an obligation to rehabilitate a certain number, in this case 5, residences that would be affordable, and they are done through a program that will be explained in a bit. The 120 units of prospective need are units that have to be accounted for, zoned for, or otherwise accounted for in some way. So the borough did accept those numbers. We filed a declaratory judgment action. That's basically a lawsuit, although there's no opponent. It's not a lawsuit against anybody, but it's a lawsuit that's filed in the courts, accepting those numbers, and that was done on January 28th of 2025. The court ordered that, let me step back. So the legislature passed a law, and part of the law was that the administrative office of the courts is supposed to propose an administrative directive on how this law is going to be implemented. So the administrative office of the courts did promulgate such a directive. It's called Directive 14-24, and it determined, in accordance with the law, that by no later than June 30th of this year, that all municipalities that were participating in the program had to have filed a housing element and fair share plan through the court. In the meantime, there had been a process where a number of towns did get challenges, and that process has been adjudicated, or at least is still ongoing. Metuchen was not involved in that. We didn't get a challenge, so we're proceeding. So what we have that's before the board tonight is the proposed housing element and fair share plan. And the process for that is that we're asking for the board, this will be as an amendment to the master plan, to approve of the, again, proposed housing element fair share plan. We'll also be going on Monday, the 9th, to the mayor and council and ask them to endorse the plan that the board hopefully adopts as an amendment to the master plan. And we're also asking that you recommend that the Borough Council endorse the plan, because there are a number of ordinances and resolutions that have to be adopted, which we don't have time to have adopted by June 30th. And so we're asking that the mayor and council endorse the plan and agree that they will adopt the necessary ordinance and resolutions, again, which Catherine will tell you a little bit more about. So while we have the opportunity to come up with a plan, there really is no real choice for a municipality in terms of not adopting a plan. So a municipality that ignores the amended Fair Housing Act opens itself up to a builder's remedy lawsuit. Any property owner or proposed developer in the municipality could sue the municipality and say, since you didn't plan for affordable housing, we have a plan for affordable housing by virtue of an inclusionary development. We are going to pack as many units as we can into this proposed development so that we can, A, satisfy as much of the need as possible, and B, make as much money as we possibly can. So the 400 and something municipalities agreed to participate in this process. Metuchen has thus far agreed to participate in it. And again, this committee, which I'll tell you about in a minute, has generated a plan with Catherine leading the effort, and that's the plan that you all have before you. It's been noticed to the public. It's been provided to the clerks of adjoining municipalities. It's been provided to the DCA. It's provided to the Office of Planning Advocacy. As we said, I think it's the best plan that we could come up with. The committee or the working group that came up with it, at least as far as the outline, subject to Catherine actually preparing the plan, consisted of myself, the Borough Administrator, Melissa Pearlstein, Chris Cosenza, our planner, Aaron Stankiewicz of CPG&H, who's the administrative agent for affordable housing for the borough, Aaron Simone of Maley Givens, who are the redevelopment council for the borough, our planning board member, Linda Koskoski, who is special projects for the borough, and Catherine Sarmet. I don't think I left anybody out. So this is the public hearing. Mr. Chairman, if you please, we'll have Ms. Sarmet present the plan to the board. Afterwards, although I don't see a large public gathering here, we'll open the hearing up to the public for any comments or questions. And that's what we're going to do today.
Very good. Do you want to swear Catherine in?
Sure. Do you swear the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
The witness has been sworn.
Thank you. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. Would you like me to give any credentials or anything? I know I'm
You
representing the
know,
borough, but if,
although many may be familiar with your credentials, so let's just, for the sake of those who aren't familiar, give a little backstory.
we'll err on the side of caution.
Can I ask you to please speak into the mic?
I will.
Yeah, and you can actually hold it. It's
gonna hold
it's
it up.
probably better if you
I
do
talk
that.
with my hands sometimes. Can you hear me now?
There you
Is
go.
that okay?
Yeah, we'll have we'll have our television people coming up and telling us if they can't hear you. So.
Please
Sorry,
let me know
Brandon.
if you can't hear me. Please let me know. I'll speak up. So my name is Catherine Sarmad. I'm with Sarmad Planning Group, my own planning firm. I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. My license is in good standing and is active. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, which is the national accreditation for planners. I largely represent municipalities as my clientele. I represent the Borough of Florham Park, the Township of Randolph, the Township of Bridgewater, and I'm the affordable housing planner for the Township of Sparta in Sussex County and the Township of Warren in Somerset County, as well as the Borough of Metuchen. I also have been recognized as an expert in affordable housing planning in multiple vicinages in New Jersey, including Burlington County, Morris County, and Union County.
Well, it sounds like we're in good hands, and at the stating the obvious, we'll accept Catherine as an expert witness.
Thank you. And thank you, board members and chairman, for having me this evening to give this presentation. As Mr. Renaud mentioned, this is an important step according to the amended Fair Housing Act. Immunity, the borough's immunity from builder's remedy does rely upon this board acting on the housing element. Not to put too much pressure on the board members, but so I just wanted to first note that the plan is dated May 20th, 2025. Mr. Cosenza, your board planner, who has been very active and helpful in this process and putting together this plan, did note some typographical edits. I can list them out if you want me to. I'd hope that they could be included if this board is going to take action and adopt this, that it can be included in a final. But they're just typographical in nature. If you want me to, I could go through those.
Bob, do you think it would be necessary to itemize those or just take them?
I think we should note what they are. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, but I think we
I
should.
can do that.
Well,
I'll do
that's
that
fine.
before I
That's
get
why
into-
you're here.
Yeah, before I get into the actual substance of the plan, I'll just do that quickly.
For the
if
record.
That's okay. So on Roman numeral page 2 under the acknowledgements page. I apologize to Ms. Cohn, I forgot your name in the list, but that needs to get added to the list, so that will be added on page 1. There's a repetitive clause under bullet point number 5 that needs to be deleted, starting with the clause including its fair share for low and moderate, and ending at income housing there, that little small clause. On page 8, the total number on table 4 on the bottom left corner needs to be updated. It was just didn't get updated. And also on table 5, the total population number needs to be updated. On page 11, the first paragraph, there was just some errors that never got updated. And a lot of these, I apologize. I can't emphasize how quickly this process had to move. We knew June 30th was coming, but there was no extensions granted despite the program itself moving a little bit slower than anticipated. And so I do apologize for the typographical errors, but it won't happen again. On page 12, this is not substantive, but there was a comment to flip the table because the borough of Metuchen showed up on the left-hand side column in every other table, and in this case, the county showed up, so just flipping that. On page 15, table 18, just needed to update the total number at the bottom of the table. On page 16, table 19, the total at the bottom needs to be updated, and on the paragraph below that needed to be updated and will be. And then on page 17, the table needs to, the bottom, I just put the wrong acronym for NJTPA, so the North New Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, it says NJPTA in both table 21 and 22. And then on page 18, there's some blanks in the table that just needed to be filled in, but it didn't change any of the numbers in the table. On page 23, table B, there's some block and lot numbers that Mr. Cosenza had identified, some of the block and lots since the project had been constructed. I was relying upon some of our old data from when they were in old housing elements, but those block and lots have been updated from block consolidations and such. So those have been updated. And then pages 24, 25, similarly, the block and lots referencing to the table in the narrative have all been updated to match what will be updated in the table, as well as on pages 27 and 29, the block and lots will be updated in the narrative to match what's in the table as well. Then there's one last one, bear with me. The block and lot for Galton redevelopment on page 30 has also been updated, and that's the balance of the typographical edits.
Very good.
So none of these are substantive changes to what the board has?
No, none of them are
Okay.
substantive.
Thank you.
So Mr. Renaud gave a great overview of kind of the Mount Laurel history. I will say that Metuchen specifically has been compliant with its Mount Laurel obligations since it's had them in the prior round. So since the mid-'80s all the way now to today, Metuchen has been proactive. Metuchen has satisfied its obligations. So in the prior rounds, which was 1987 to 1999, Metuchen had a prior round obligation of 99 units, and it satisfied and exceeded it. From the third round, which, as we heard, COA kind of went defunct in the middle, so the third round actually ran from 1999 until the end of this month, on June 30th, and that was a little bit different. The obligation for that, because of that gap period from 1999 to 2015, before the Supreme Court took action, made that obligation much higher, and it was 349, so significantly higher than that 99 from the prior round. And for that reason, Metuchen sought what's known as a vacant land adjustment in the third round. A vacant land adjustment is when the municipality analyzes all of the Class 1 vacant or Class 15C borough-owned properties to determine their developability, essentially, at a presumptive minimum density of 6 units an acre. Any sites that are developable get captured into that, and it gets filtered into what's called an RDP, or realistic development potential, and that becomes the borough's target obligation. In the third round, as Mr. Renaud mentioned, this was before the courts, and so that was solidified in a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center and in any interested parties, and showed that the borough had an RDP of 133, which left a remaining 216 units of what's known as unmet need, informally known as unmet need. And because it is not something that was codified in the second round COA regulations, which were relied upon in that round, there was no consistent basis for how unmet need was treated town by town. It was something that the borough identified in its settlement agreement, that there were certain overlay zones, downtown zoning that permitted residential already, and there was a few sites that they had kind of tagged for overlay zoning, which is permitted under unmet need, and otherwise would not be permitted to solve an obligation. Now that we're in the fourth round and we look back and we analyze all the things that were done in the third round, the borough had actually gotten to a point where it exceeded that RDP of 133 from various redevelopment projects, from various planning board applications, zoning board applications, because the borough did adopt what's known as a mandatory set-aside ordinance in the last round, which was fruitful in basically making sure that when residential developments did benefit from rezonings, or devariances or redevelopment, that they had to still provide affordable housing despite the borough having taken care of its real RDP in the third round. And so when we started, that committee that Mr. Renaud mentioned started meeting about a year ago, the first thing we did was assess where we were in relation to our third round obligation. Even though the RDP is the focus, is the target number, the unmet need kind of hangs in the balance. And all of these obligations are cumulative. And I promise you I'll get to the fourth round also, because I know that's largely what this document is. But the third round is important because we got to a point where we realized that the borough had accumulated up to 287 credits versus the 133 it was required. So it had gone significantly in the direction of being fully compliant with its third round obligation. And so with the help of the whole committee, we looked at ways that, in light of having a fourth round obligation coming up, would we even be able to do the third round? We'd sought a vacant land adjustment. Would there be a need or an ability to accommodate anything in addition to it? And what we looked at was existing units for what's called an extension of control. So affordable units have deed restrictions on them, and when those deed restrictions expire, particularly because the UHAC, Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, have been updated recently, they do provide the ability for the municipality to extend those controls for another 30 years and get credit for it. And so we looked at, and I give Chris lots of credit because he identified a lot of them. And if they were expiring during this round, so between 2025 and 2035, we'd be able to extend them. So we looked at existing units we could extend, take credit for them, particularly in our third round unmet need. And then also, you'll see this as a big theme for the fourth round, also utilizing things like redevelopment plans and redevelopment projects that are already on the books, already permit housing and affordable housing as a set-aside in order to get credit for them. So not necessarily promoting any new development, not necessarily rezoning any new properties, but utilizing what we have, utilizing the redevelopment plans that have already been considered and that thoughtful planning has gone into for years now. And that largely for the third round, or portion of the third round, included the Metuchen Arts District redevelopment plan, and specifically Parcel C, which is the Halsey Street lot. And that was how we would solve for the third round, for lack of a better word. And that took care of the third round obligation. And then I'll move on to the fourth round. The fourth round, as Mr. Renaud mentioned, we received the obligation from the DCA as an advisory number in October of last year. There was an opportunity. We did look into the potential to adjust it, as many municipalities did, to see the factors that went into that obligation, how it was calculated. And Metuchen only had what was identified under the factors, only 8 acres of vacant land or developable land under that factor calculation. And so there was no reason really to fight the number, as some towns had, a lot more vacant land that would have an impact. It didn't have any impact if you even took all the acreage out. And so I think it was very wise of the council to make the decision to adopt that number, to avoid conflict, to avoid having to go through the resolution of the program. There are still municipalities that don't have numbers from that program. Some of them did try and go through a settlement process, but the borough was proactive in just adopting the number. And similar to the third round, recognizing that land can't be created, the fourth round we did, and you'll see it as Appendix A to this document, another vacant land adjustment analysis. And that included, again, looking through all of the current Class 1 vacant properties, all of the Class 15C borough-owned properties, and we don't have, Metuchen doesn't have any farmland assessed properties, but if we did, you'd have to look at those. And that analysis went parcel by parcel. There's a table that analyzes all of them and created an RDP, a realistic development potential, for the fourth round of 16, from that 120 down to 16. There is one difference between this round and any other prior round, is that the amended Fair Housing Act did include a provision now that if a municipality seeks a vacant land adjustment, it does require a consideration, or a requirement actually, to look at 25% of your adjusted prospective need for sites that are likely to redevelop. That means that, well, it's very unclear what it means because the adjusted prospective need was never defined in that law, but what we took it as in the most conservative approach in the case that our plan is ever objected to is that it meant 120 minus 16 times 25% times a quarter, which would lead to 26. So some other towns are taking it as 1/4 of 16. We took the conservative approach of the adjusted number being the adjustment on the less the total number. And so that leaves that's a total obligation of an RDP of 16 and a 25% sites likely redevelop of 26 for a total of 42. So our target focus for the fourth round was a number of 42. And similar to what I mentioned about the end of the third round and how we were going to satisfy that, we looked again at what redevelopment is already adopted, is already in place that allows for densities and also requires an affordable set-aside, and can we take credit for it? And that's was the focus of how we satisfy our RDP. And so the RDP we did satisfy with, again, the Metuchen Arts District, the balance of the Halsey Street lot from the third round, just one unit. Parcel B, which is the sites that are north of Warnick Place, and then 12 and 16 Pearl Street, which is a new redevelopment plan that's been authorized. That's on the north side of the train tracks on the end of Pearl Street, across from, or the end of the street across from the town plaza, right? And then there's also the Oakite redevelopment plan, which is over off of that's on Durham Road, Middlesex Avenue, behind the Starbucks and between the Starbucks and the sports complex there. And so that already permits, actually it was approved, I believe, by this board for a assisted living facility. It does permit age-restricted housing, and so that's in the plan or in the RDP partially. And that's how we solve our RDP. One other thing to note about the planning that goes into it and the thought process is we wanted to create a plan that is also realistic in nature, so it has mechanisms that are already in place that are or redevelopment plans that already allow things. So it's realistic in nature, it's fair to low and moderate income households, and I don't remember if Mr. Renaud mentioned this or not, but there is an objection period after June 30th, beginning July 1st through August, the end of August, that allows anyone to object to our plan, and then that objection, after that's over, there is a resolution period from the beginning of September to the end of December for all of this to get resolved. And so I don't know if it will happen for Metuchen, but some other municipalities have interested developers that are not going to be included in the plan, and they're probably the most likely that are going to object to the plan. Now, they can't object because they don't like that their site wasn't included. They have to object to the defensibility of the other things that are in the plan. Are they realistic, and are they fair to low and moderate income households? And that was part of our objective also, was to create a plan that has those things. And so, similar to the third round, there's really no guidelines for what you have to do for an unmet need. But again, in the abundance of caution, we looked at what's already there, what can we take credit for. We're not going outside bounds. We're not looking at other properties. We're not looking to rezone many new sites. What can we utilize? And you may be asking, why would we even take a vacant land adjustment Why would we take an adjustment off our number if we're just going to try and solve the whole thing anyway? And the thing is that the way that the vacant land adjustments are looked at, the way the RDP is looked at, that's really your target number. And the unmet need, I don't want to say it's less tangible or flexible, but there's less pressure to have to follow through with them exactly, I'll say. Like I said before, it permits overlay zoning for unmet need. Overlay zoning still permits underlying zoning to remain for uses that are there under the other zoning to continue, such as commercial uses and things like that. And so this plan was really looking at how do we face the unmet need, plan for it a way we want to, and in case there is a developer who does want to come in and knock on the door at a later date, they can't say, well, you have all this unmet need, we can solve it for you. We can help you solve it. Obviously, I think there's other steps that would go with that, but we wanted to head that off at the pass and make sure that that wasn't going to be a complication. And again, we were doing it and we were looking at it in ways that there was already a contemplation and a long-standing planning going into those sites like redevelopment plans where we weren't faced with making decisions about density and putting in sites we weren't comfortable with simply because we wanted to solve a number. And there are municipalities that are faced with that challenge currently. And you know, we looked at it differently to make sure that it was in the control of the borough. And so there are the other parcel in the Metuchen Arts District, Parcel D, which is the site south of Warnick Place, that are included in the unmet need section. The Oakite redevelopment plan, the balance of what I'd mentioned that's in the RDP. So it's split between the two. And then there's sites across the street from the Metuchen Arts District that have been interested on Amboy Ave that are interested in redeveloping as well for a small project. So those are all included, along with some bonus credits. You still have the allowances for bonuses and things like that that the law allows. And that essentially solves the fourth round also, again, with a RDP, a solid number we had to target on, and then this looser unmet need that we have broken up into the two tables purposefully to show the difference between the two. In addition to, that's the bulk of the plan, there is a map that shows all of the sites that are in the plan by what round they were in. So the prior round sites, the third round sites, and then the sites looking for the fourth round. There is a section required, despite the state development and redevelopment plan not yet being adopted, there's a requirement now to address how our plan is consistent or not consistent with that draft plan. So there's a section on that. And the conclusion was that Metuchen is in the PA 1, which is planning area 1, which is the metropolitan planning area, and that it does meet the goals of growth and redevelopment in that area by way of our affordable housing plan. The appendices to this document, as I mentioned, Appendix A includes a lengthy vacant land adjustment report, which largely has a lot of maps. You had to go site by site and map each of them to show their encumbrances and their size and all of that. And so that's the Appendix A. As Mr. Renaud mentioned, there are a few things in this document that are in draft form that are unadopted that the council will have to act on at a later date, not their next meeting, but in the future, which include a spending plan, which is a requirement for the next 10 years to look at how the borough will spend the Affordable Housing Trust Fund monies. Presently, the spending plan, and I don't want to, it's not, many are familiar with budgets. I don't want to call the spending plan a budget. It's a loose way of looking because you project out money you haven't yet collected and you show ways that you're going to spend money you haven't yet collected. But Metuchen has been very good about utilizing its trust fund for affordable housing activity, which is, I think, a big plus. And this will show that we can utilize the trust fund for those extension of controls. There are required minimums for each homeowner or each rental unit pursuant to the UHAC regs, and so that spending plan utilizes the money to get those credits, essentially, in the next few years. And it also builds in some funding for the potential for a special needs housing project, such as a group home that may be seeking funding to create or subsidize that use. And it also shows that you're allowed to spend it for administrative purposes, such as the development of this housing element, so that it doesn't come out of the borough capital funds. It comes out of the trust fund to spend on things. It cannot be used for litigation or anything like that. So if we ever do get into litigation, we can't use the trust funds for that, but we can use it for administrative purposes. Appendix C includes a ordinance, the only ordinance that we have in draft form for this plan, which is an amended mandatory set-aside ordinance. There is a potential that this could get tweaked further, but the idea behind this was we have an existing mandatory set-aside ordinance on the books that right now requires, it's based on tenure, so a rental project will have a 15% set-aside of units if it has 5 or more units that benefit from a rezoning, redevelopment, or a D-variance. And for sale units have a 20% set aside for the same. And this proposes to simply just change it to 20% across the board. This was a recommendation I had made because I had work in other towns and do their affordable housing, and it became, as these obligations get higher and cumulative over years, many of these municipalities started asking developers if they could do a larger set aside of units to help with their obligations. It's a fair question to ask a developer as they're building an 85% market rate project with 15% affordable units, if they could do 5% more to help. So that was one of the proposals here for the mandatory set-aside ordinance. There is Metuchen is unique in that, or I wouldn't say unique, but because of the development nature of Metuchen having a downtown, there are some smaller projects where this could potentially hurt them. So there's not hurt them, but it could make it difficult to develop. And so there's a potential that this might be modified to have a trigger for projects over 10 units or over 20 units to have the 20% set aside. The other ones would still have to have a set aside, but it could still be at the 15% potentially. But we're still talking through the potential, I guess, pitfalls of upping the mandatory set aside ordinance across the board. But I will say that's the form it's in right now. So if it passes, then I think that would be fine. And then the other appendices you'll see, this is actually just documentation for things that already exist. So there's the ordinance that shows that we've adopted the updated Metuchen Arts District redevelopment plan to show that it's there and that it's been adopted. The ordinance for the amended Oakite redevelopment plan from 2021. And then Appendix G just has crediting documentation, so it has the deed restriction documents for projects that didn't previously get certified during the third round. They were built essentially in the last 9 or so years, and so the court never certified their documents, so it's just proof that they have deed restrictions and that they're affordable now. And then the last appendix is just a full size of the map of all the sites that was included at the rear of the report. And that's the gist of it.
So on those ordinances, I should just note that pretty much all of them are either in place or they're essentially similar to the ordinances that previously existed, but there will be some changes, like Catherine mentioned, the 15% to 20%. We had a 50-year covenant period, so that's been changed in the law, but it won't be changed for Metuchen. So all of those, what I'm saying is there's no great departures by way of these ordinances from what we have now.
Very good. Well, good thing this isn't complicated. That's good to know.
Right.
I hope it's not too complicated. I tried to explain it.
It's too complicated, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, I think the bottom line is that what the board can feel good about is that, Metuchen as a community has been proactive throughout the decades, although the apparatus around Mount Laurel has been evolving throughout the decades. The borough's always been working towards achieving these goals, so we're in a better position than other communities who might be vulnerable to the builder's remedy. But at any rate, Bob, given that Catherine has made her presentation, how would you like to proceed in terms of order of operations?
I don't know. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I think Catherine did a great job.
Okay. Then I think we should open the hearing to the public.
Okay, so let's do that. We're going to open up to the public. If you're in the public, you'd like to ask a question, make a statement, come down to the microphone, give us your name, your address, tell us what's on your mind. And surveying the landscape, I'm going to say no one wants to come forward at this time, and I'm going to close the public portion.
So maybe we have questions or comments from the board?
I think so, probably, with those of you who had the time to read all the many pages of this wonderful document. Do you have any pressing questions?
I just have a couple questions. I mean, is there any time limit on this?
Yes.
No. Report.
Yes, the time limit is, we're going to the mayor and council on Monday, so yes, there's a time limit. And
pressure.
we have to have this adopted and approved at least 2 days prior to June 30th, because it's everything had to be adopted by June 30th. And then you had or 2 days after everything is adopted, whichever is sooner. Usually they say whichever is later, but in this case, it was whichever is sooner. So after we do this tonight, hopefully, we go to the mayor and council on Monday, and then by Wednesday, I have to get everything filed because of the 2-day requirement. So yes, there is a time constraint.
And is, just again, I just want to be clear, is the court the ultimate authority in terms of either reviewing this, or is the council decision the bottom line, and for how long?
So the process is that we will, as I said, we'll submit this by the 30th. And then there is, and as Catherine mentioned, there is then a challenge period through August 31st. If someone challenges, then the process is that there will first be, and they've made these terms up, there will first be something called sessions where the parties are supposed to get together and hopefully resolve whatever the differences are. If they're not resolved in these sessions, then there is a settlement conference, which the difference between that and a session is lost to me. But in any event, then there's a settlement conference. The vicinage judge is involved along with the special master, and all of this is supposed to be resolved. And then there is a Mount Laurel judge who is, I guess, overseeing everything. The vicinage judge is basically the judge in the county, and then there is a judge sort of overseeing this. Even if there's no challenge, they are supposed to review our submissions sometime after August 31st. And the borough has, according to the statute, until trying to remember now, March 31st of 2016 to actually adopt all these ordinances, although if you don't do it right away, I'm sure that, we'll have questions. So, I don't know, did I answer your question, or did I just ramble?
No, that's fine. Not to be facetious, but, we've heard a lot of numbers bandied about. It's almost like, what is our fair share obligation
like
at this time?
Episode of Severance or something.
Sure, well, the short answer is it's 5 and 120. And maybe some of which goes back to the third round, but some of it is satisfied through credits, because you get, for certain things, you get credits, like extra credit projects. So for example, if you have a family rental, you get extra credit for that. There are various kinds of developments for which you get extra credits, but essentially they're between the units and credits, that's the number that we have to come up with. And then we've got this, identifying the sites that are reasonably likely to redevelop to the extent that we're not able to meet the number due to the lack of vacant land.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Other members who have questions? I just really, Chris, this whole thing is like a moving target over the decades, you know, it's very malleable, but the amount of work, it was evident reading this amount of work that was put into this. Again, we have to feel good about our professionals, you know, they leave nothing out on the field there. Everything is captured that could benefit the community. So again, just personally speaking, I am quite grateful that everyone who participated in this effort put as much effort as they did, because it is it seems to me a very defensible amendment. At any rate, we've accounted for what this represents. I think we understand it conceptually, but the fine parts will have to trust the professionals to execute on. So really, it gets down to, at this point, we've enumerated the changes that we're going to make, that Catherine has said, and unless there are substantive questions or changes, I think we're ready for a motion to approve
I'm
this?
sorry,
Right, you have a
I just have
Sure.
one more. Do we have anything in the pipeline in terms of development applications that would trigger our affordable housing ordinances? Just curious.
In other words, anything that's anybody who's currently proposing something that's coming up on the agenda?
Yes, yeah,
I don't know. Do we?
okay. I don't know.
We have the one that Catherine mentioned, Amboy.
That's not on the agenda yet, though.
No, there's
No,
nothing
so-
on the agenda.
no.
I can say
So
that.
no, nothing right now.
Nothing in the works, nothing that's been submitted, no.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right, so you have, if there's no other questions or comments, then the board has a resolution which we prepared. It does several things. It would adopt the housing element and fair share, or actually adopt the housing element as an amendment to the master plan, and recommend that the Borough Council endorse the housing element and fair share plan, as I indicating its agreement to adopt the necessary ordinance and resolutions. It directs essentially the required filing, that this be filed with the Superior Court, that it be sent to the people that it has to be sent to, which is DCA and the Clerk of Edison and so forth. And also, obviously, although I noticed that I didn't put this in here, that obviously it's going to go to the Borough Council, because the Borough Council needs it so that it can act on it on Monday evening.
Okay. Someone like to wrap a motion around all of that?
I'll make a motion for Mr. Renaud's comments there.
Very good. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, Joanna?
Yes. Ms. Clarkson?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen? Yes. Mr. Delia?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski?
Yes.
Mr. Lifton?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the housing element adoption is successful. Thank you, team, for your hard work and efforts in this regard, and we can all feel good about it going forward. I believe we have correspondence from the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Is this just we're sharing? Is that what this is, Joanna?
There's a statutory requirement that every year that the Zoning Board of Adjustment has to prepare an annual report where it reviews its applications for the year and makes any recommendations, if any, for changes in the ordinances, I should say. So that's it. They did that, and it is required under the law to be referred to you. So the planning board has it. I guess it would, well, I mean, it does accept it, obviously. And probably it's something that the board members should take a look at and see whether there are any recommendations for changes in ordinances and whether you would agree with them. I forget whether there were any. Were there, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe there is one recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah, I looked at it 4 or 5 months ago and I forget.
Yeah,
What's
it was a recommendation related to the,
Is there a paper copy? Asking.
I can send you.
You could continue, Chris, while she's
sure.
mentioning.
The recommendation from the zoning board was that, in relation to non-conforming side yard setbacks, as you know, over the years, given a lot of non-conforming lots in the community, there's a provision that basically grants a variance automatically in a way. What it does is it exempts certain side yard deficiencies as long as you meet at least 50% of the side yard setback. So for example, if you have a lot in a zone that requires an 8-foot wide side yard setback, if you have a 5-foot setback for the existing home, you're allowed to continue upwards or backwards 1 story at a time. You can't do it for 2-story additions. You can't do it for corner lots. That's actually prevented a lot of homeowners over the years. I would estimate over 100 homeowners over the years not require a variance because, again, many homes were shifted over. That's how they were built before zoning even existed. The recommendation from the zoning board is to strike the exemption from the exemption of corner lots. The idea being, if the house is already shifted to the other side on a corner lot, what difference does it make if it's on a corner lot because the nonconformity is related to this side, not where the street side is. So I think over the years we've had to deal with these corner lot issues. They've already had the 25-foot setback already that's required, but they couldn't take advantage of that exemption because it's simply a corner lot. So the idea from the zoning board is like, let's prevent this from happening. It was triggered from an application on, I think, Jonesdale it was. And it was like, not another one. So the idea was, let's just strike this and make it easier once and for all and just deal with just the interior lot conditions.
Okay. So tonight, are we just talking about the recommendation and considering, or are you formally asking the board to endorse that change?
Well, technically, it's a governing body that makes ordinance changes, but I think from the planning board's perspective, you're accepting through correspondence. If any recommendations you want to pass to me through the master plan effort, we could start to make those recommendations in the master plan. If not, we can probably just make the ordinance change. I don't think we need to amend the master plan for that.
I can see it from your body language. You've encountered this many times and you've seen it enough, kind of.
Yeah, over the 15 years, I've seen at least a dozen or two corner lot conditions, like, why are we here for this? And I think the zoning board agreed that, yeah, we should probably address this issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's expensive for the, people when they're doing
And
the
extremely
project.
time-consuming, yeah.
There's a lot of things we've done over the years to make it easier, but, there are still some things that lag behind. Okay, so I assume we want to separate that from the meeting minutes, right, Bob?
Yeah, I think that yes. In other words, what we could do is, if the board is inclined, I mean, we could, you could either do it formally by doing a motion or informally by simply directing Chris to do it, but to maybe draft up an ordinance that carries out that sentiment or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it'll take all of 1 minute.
Okay.
But then council has to adopt.
Council would have to adopt it. I mean, the way we could do it would be, we would look at it and then make the recommendation to the council. Or it could go to the council first and then come back to you for review, either way.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if the zoning board's run into it that number of times and they're frustrated by it and our professional agrees, I'm of the mind that it seems like a logical step to move forward with it, however many bodies have to be involved to get it done. So we want a motion to say specifically that we.
Why don't we have a motion then, if we're going to do that, is to accept the report and adopt the recommendations.
There you go. So, who'd like to make that motion? Don't all go at once.
Well, if we move that motion, I still want to see the actual
Yes.
ordinance.
We're saying, hey, Chris is going to draft it, bring it back to the board. We have to agree with what Chris
Okay.
does, and then it'll go to the governing body and so on and so forth.
Correct.
I'll move accepting the zoning board report and recommendation.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Very good. Normally, I'd say all aye or nay, but this is kind of unique, so why don't we go through the roster, Joanna, and let's ask each member to sound off so that we know we've officially given our stamp of approval or not.
Of course, Ms. Clarkson,
Yes.
Ms. Cohn,
Yes.
Mr. Delia,
Yes.
Mr. Grossman,
Yes.
Ms. Koskowski,
Yes.
Mr. Lifton,
Yes.
Mr. Erickson.
Yes, okay, thank you to our fellow members of the zoning board, and Godspeed to them, and we'll move forward. And then this we can just do by voice, we have the May 1st, 2025 meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve that, please?
So moved.
So moved. Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The
Oh,
meeting-
one abstention.
One abstention noted. And anyone who wasn't here, they don't count. So meeting minutes are approved. And then you want to reopen the public portion a second time, Bob?
We usually have a public portion for the general purpose, so
Okay.
we might as well.
Okay, I'll reopen the public portion again. If you have any other things you'd like to say or questions you'd like to ask, come forward. Okay, seeing no one there, I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion. And before we adjourn for this evening, is there any other business that we haven't discussed yet that we'd like to discuss now? I'm going to say no. Okay, so then motion to adjourn, please. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all, and good evening.